Fleet Commander Vexther clicked all four mandibles in frustration. Her multifaceted eyes locked on the holographic sensor readings hovering in the center of her bridge. The human vessel ahead, designation TNS Prometheus, should have been obliterated hours ago. By all known laws of engineering and probability, it should now be drifting as a shattered husk of metal through the vibrant Carina Nebula. Yet it pressed on, its mangled hull glowing faintly under the nebula's multicolored light, stubbornly defying all logic. "Status report," she chittered sharply, turning to Science Officer Elner, whose antennae twitched nervously. Elner bent over his console, the pale blue illumination of his displays casting flickering shadows over his chitinous face. "Commander, our analysis confirms the following. The Prometheus's primary power core was destroyed within the first wave of our assault. Subsequent firepower severed their main propulsion systems and breached their outer hull in 17 locations. By all accounts, they should be adrift, lifeless. But they are not," Vexther interjected, her mandibles clicking in irritation. "Explain." Elner hesitated, his antennae curling in thought. "Commander, it appears the humans possess an array of redundant systems unlike anything we've encountered. When we destroyed their antimatter reactor, they immediately activated a fusion core. When we disabled that, they switched to chemical batteries. And when those batteries depleted, they transitioned to what appears to be a primitive solar energy system. A fourth power system?" Vexther leaned closer to the hologram, her thorax tense with disbelief. "What species requires four distinct power sources?" "Humans, apparently," Elner replied, his voice tinged with reluctant admiration. "And that's not all. Their propulsion systems are equally excessive. After disabling their quantum drive, we destroyed their fusion engines. Yet, they unfurled solar sails to harness radiation from the nebula. When we shredded the sails, they activated chemical thrusters. They're now propelling themselves forward using compressed gas. Like bacteria using flagella," Kreezax, the weapons officer, scoffed. "Primitive. Perhaps," Vexther muttered, "but clearly effective. What about their life support?" Elner hesitated again, his compound eyes flicking over new sensor data. "Their environmental systems are compartmentalized. Each module operates independently. When we breach one section, emergency bulkheads seal it off. Their atmosphere processors are redundant. They have multiple water recycling systems. I even detect a secondary bridge nestled deep within the ship's core. Remarkably, they appear to have mechanical systems requiring no power. Devices driven by springs and compressed air." "Mechanical?" Vexther's mandibles clacked rapidly. "What madness compels them to integrate such ancient technologies into a starship?" Elner's antennae drooped. "It is difficult to say, Commander. Their methods defy conventional logic." The bridge grew quiet, save for the hum of the hexapod cruiser's systems. All eyes, or their species equivalent, were fixed on the display. Despite the gaping holes in its hull, the human ship advanced steadily through the nebula like a wounded but unrelenting predator. "Commander," Communications Officer Tixpar interrupted, her voice hesitant, "the Prometheus is hailing us." Vexther straightened. On screen, the holographic display shimmered to life, revealing the Prometheus's bridge. It was in shambles, sparking consoles, dangling wires, and scorch marks everywhere. Yet the human commanding the vessel, a woman with short black hair and sharp eyes, sat calmly in her chair. Her face was illuminated by the eerie red glow of emergency lights, but her expression was one of controlled confidence. She smiled, a predator's grin. "This is Captain and Shing of the TNS Prometheus," the human announced, her voice smooth and steady. "I notice you've been trying to disable our ship for the past few hours. How's that working out for you?" The audacity of the question made Vexther's mandibles freeze mid-click. "Your vessel is heavily damaged," she replied, her tone icy. "You've lost multiple critical systems. Surrender now, and we will ensure the survival of your crew." Shing's grin widened, teeth flashing in a way that sent a shiver through Vexther's thorax. "Lost multiple systems? Oh, you mean all those primary systems you knocked out? The ones with the obvious power signatures? I hate to disappoint you, but we haven't even started using our actual backup systems yet. Those were just the decoys." "Decoys?" Vexther echoed, her mind racing. "You intentionally built false systems?" "Of course," Shing replied, her tone light, as though explaining an obvious concept to a child. Rule 1 of human engineering. Always make your enemies think they've won before revealing your true capabilities. Those antimatter reactors you destroyed. holograms disguising minimal power cells. The fusion cores? Mostly empty shells rigged to emit the right signatures. We learned long ago that the best way to survive is to make our enemies waste their resources on fake targets. Vexther's mandibles clicked furiously as she turned to Elner. Is this true? Elner's antennae quivered as he double-checked his instruments. Commander, it appears so. I'm detecting previously hidden power signatures. The Prometheus has multiple layers of concealed systems. Xing leaned forward slightly, her smile turning razor-sharp. Now you're catching on. Humans have a saying. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. We call it Murphy's Law. In space, where the universe itself is trying to kill you, we've learned to prepare for every possible failure. Every critical system on this ship has backups. Every backup has alternatives. Every alternative has manual overrides. And every override has mechanical failsafes. Vexther stared at the human captain, a mix of disbelief and grudging respect swelling within her. Why waste so many resources on redundancy? She asked finally. Why not simply build better systems? Xing's expression hardened. Because in space, elegance equals death. Efficiency? Death. Optimization? Death. The universe doesn't care how perfect your systems are. It will find a way to break them. The only way to survive is to be overwhelmingly prepared for everything to go wrong all at once. Another explosion rocked the Prometheus, sending sparks flying across the screen. Xing barely flinched. That, she said casually, was our tertiary portside hydrogen tank rupturing. Good thing we have 6 more. Oh, and since you destroyed our main communication array, this conversation is being transmitted through our 7th backup system. Light signals bouncing off the nebula. Primitive but effective. Vexther felt her thorax constrict with unease. Every move her fleet had made was being countered, not with brute force, but with relentless preparation. Her species had always valued efficiency and precision. The idea of building ships with this level of redundancy was almost incomprehensible. Commander, Kryzax interrupted, her voice taut, our missile reserves are down to 15%. Most have been expended destroying decoys. And our power cores are at 70% capacity, Elner added. We'll need to withdraw to recharge soon. Xing's predatory smile returned. Having resource management issues? That's the problem with efficient systems. They're great until they run dry. Meanwhile, we've barely started fighting back. Those little point defense turrets you've been dealing with? Toys. If you'd like to see our main guns, I'd be happy to demonstrate. Vexther's mandibles froze. The humans hadn't been fighting back with full strength. They'd been baiting her fleet into exhausting itself. Perhaps, Vexther said slowly, we should discuss terms. Excellent idea, Xing replied. Here's my proposal. You withdraw your ships, file a report about how ridiculously tough human vessels are, and spread the word that attacking us is a terrible idea. In return, we won't demonstrate our primary weapons. Deal. Vexther hesitated. Her mandibles twitched in resignation. Deal. As the hexapod ships disappeared into the nebula, Xing turned to her first officer. Think they bought it? Rodriguez grinned. Oh, they bought it. Should I tell engineering they can stop peddling the backup life support generators? Not yet, Xing replied. Let's stay on backups a bit longer. You never know when the universe might try to surprise us. The Prometheus cruised forward, battered but unbroken. A testament to humanity's ultimate survival strategy. Stubborn, unyielding preparation. In the quiet moments after the hexapod cruisers retreated, Captain and Xing leaned back in her chair, letting the adrenaline ebb. She traced a finger along the rim of her coffee mug, her mind drifting to her academy days. She remembered sitting through a lecture on the early days of interstellar travel, when humanity faced its own arrogance in the unforgiving expanse of space. Class, the professor had said, pacing before the holographic display of a shattered spaceship, this is the ISS Resolve. Launched in 2117, it was humanity's first attempt at a manned interstellar voyage. It didn't even survive past Alpha Centauri. A single micrometeorite pierced its hull, causing catastrophic decompression. All hands were lost. Why? Because we were too proud to design redundancies. We assumed we'd thought of everything, and space taught us otherwise. The professor paused, her face grave. And that lesson cost us lives. Today, you will learn why redundancy is not wasteful. It is survival. If you graduate from this academy thinking otherwise, I promise the universe will humble you. That lecture had burned into Anne's mind, shaping her understanding of engineering and tactics. "Captain," Rodriguez interrupted her reverie, "engineering reports all secondary systems are fully operational. They've already switched to repairing the tertiary backups for redundancy levels 5 through 7. And chuckled. "Good. Let them know I want the redundant thermal exhaust shielding replaced first. It's not glamorous, but I'd rather not overheat when we hit the next asteroid field." "Yes, ma'am." "And the ninth backup comm system?" "Smoke signals, Rodriguez." "Make it happen," she said with mock gravity. Rodriguez saluted with a grin. "Aye, Captain." Meanwhile, aboard the lead hexapod cruiser Voracious Mandible, Fleet Commander Vexther convened her officers in the war room. The chamber was filled with tense energy as Vexther's upper limbs gestured toward the holographic display of the human vessel. "They outlasted 3 of our finest ships." Vexther snapped. "Explain how this happened." "Elner, I want answers." The science officer's antennae quivered nervously. "Commander," as the human captain said, "their entire ship is designed to frustrate any attempts to disable it. Every time we targeted what appeared to be a critical system, another would activate. It's as though their engineers planned for every conceivable contingency." "Every conceivable contingency?" Weapons Officer Krizax said with a sneer. "That's impossible. There must be a weakness." "We thought the same, Krizax, but I reviewed the footage of the battle," Elner replied. "The humans deliberately baited us into wasting resources on decoy systems. We were fighting shadows while their true systems remained operational. Their power grid alone is a labyrinthine network. If one node fails, another 3 take over the load." Vexther let out a frustrated hiss. "This cannot stand. If humans truly operate like this, they are a threat to the collective's efficiency doctrine. If their philosophy spreads, it could destabilize our entire fleet design framework. Elner, analyze their design for potential exploitation. We will not let them humiliate us again." As Vexther and her crew plotted their next move, Captain Xing held a debrief with her senior staff. "Let's go over the battle," she said, gesturing to the glowing tactical display. "How did we hold out for so long?" "I want specifics." Lieutenant Rodriguez tapped the screen, highlighting key moments. The layered redundancy worked exactly as planned. When they breached the primary hull, the secondary pressure barriers kept atmosphere loss to a minimum. That bought us time to cycle life support to the tertiary system, which is why the crew in sections 4 through 7 didn't asphyxiate. "Good," Xing said. "What about propulsion?" "They hammered the quantum drive and the fusion engines pretty hard," added Ensign Patel, the propulsion specialist. "But the manual thrusters got us through the nebula. Admittedly, they're crude, but they worked," Xing finished. "And the decoy systems?" Patel smirked. "They swallowed the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. They dumped almost half their ordnance into those holographic antimatter reactors. If they'd gotten close enough to realize they were fakes, it might have been a different story." Xing nodded. "Well done, everyone. But let's not get complacent. Rodriguez, I want you to oversee drills for scenarios where our tertiary systems are compromised. Patel, let's refine those decoys. They were good, but I think we can make them better." In the early days of interstellar travel, humanity's first truly intergalactic vessel, the Endurance, became a template for all future designs. It wasn't a sleek, efficient machine like the ships of the Hexapod Collective. It was a monstrosity of overlapping systems, redundancies, and failsafes. Engineers had debated whether it was worth dedicating an entire deck to a spare water filtration system. "Won't the primary and secondary systems be enough?" one skeptical administrator had asked. The lead engineer's reply became a motto for spacefaring humanity. "Enough? There's no such thing as enough when the alternative is death." The Endurance not only survived its maiden voyage, but thrived. Over time, humanity embraced the concept of overpreparedness, expanding it to every facet of interstellar life. Back on the Voracious Mandible, Vexther and her officers finalized a new strategy. "If the humans thrive on redundancy, then we shall overwhelm their capacity to respond," Vexther declared. "Prepare 3 squadrons for simultaneous assaults. While one targets their decoys, another will strike their propulsion, and the third will target life support. We will not give them time to recover." "But, Commander," Elner interjected, "what if they have redundancies we can't detect?" Vexther's mandibles clicked irritably. "Then we learn. Failure is not an option." The Prometheus was still navigating the nebula when the hexapods returned, this time with 6 cruisers. Alarms blared across the human vessel as the tactical screen lit up with hostile signatures. "Multiple contacts, Captain," Rodriguez shouted. Xing clenched her jaw. "All hands to battle stations. Patel, activate decoy systems and bring main power online. Let's see if they've learned anything." The hexapods attacked in a coordinated assault, targeting propulsion, life support, and weapon systems simultaneously. Explosions rippled across the Prometheus as systems failed. But as always, the backups took over. "We've lost secondary fusion power," an engineer reported. "Switch to the thorium reactors," Xing ordered. "Rodriguez, how are the decoys holding?" "They're not buying the first layer, Captain. But the second wave of holograms is keeping them occupied." Xing smiled grimly. "Good. Now let's show them what happens when we stop playing defense." With the hexapods focused on disabling the Prometheus, they failed to notice the human vessel charging its main weapons. Captain Xing's voice rang through the bridge. "Target their lead cruiser. Fire all primary cannons." The Prometheus unleashed a devastating volley, its weapons tearing through the voracious mandible's shields and hull. The hexapod ship disintegrated in a fiery explosion, forcing the remaining cruisers to scatter. "Secondary target acquired," Rodriguez said. "Fire again," Xing commanded. Within minutes, the hexapod fleet was in disarray. Their efficient designs left no room for the kind of resilience humanity excelled at. One by one, the hexapod ships retreated, their weapons depleted and their morale shattered. As the last hexapod cruiser fled, Captain Xing allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. "Status report," she said. "Minor damage to tertiary systems," Rodriguez replied. "No casualties. All critical systems operational. And, we didn't even use the coffee maker backups." Xing laughed. "Good. File a report to command. Make sure they know that redundancy isn't just a philosophy. It's a survival strategy." "And Rodriguez?" "Yes, Captain. Add redundant spite reserves to the wish list. I have a feeling we'll need them for the next round." The Hexapod Collective, now wary of humanity's stubborn resilience, began re-evaluating their fleet designs. But deep down, Vexter knew they would never match the humans' unique approach. After all, how could they, when humans were willing to dedicate an entire subsystem to something as trivial as coffee? In the end, it was humanity's unpredictable priorities that left the hexapods baffled. The pursuit of perfection was an illusion they had chased for centuries, but humanity had embraced imperfection as a cornerstone of survival. Later that evening, Captain Xing sat alone in her quarters, staring at her terminal. She opened a secure channel to Earth, recording a message for the Fleet Admiralty. "Admiral Park," she began, her voice steady but laced with exhaustion. "The Prometheus encountered a hexapod task force today. They were relentless, but they underestimated us, as most do. The redundancy doctrine saved us again. But there's something more critical I need to report." She paused, tapping her fingers on the desk before continuing. "The hexapods aren't just testing our defenses. They're trying to learn. Their attacks today were calculated, targeting our perceived weaknesses. While we held the line, it's clear they're evolving. If they adapt their strategies to include redundancies, we might lose our edge." Xing leaned forward, her gaze intense. "It's not just about the Prometheus anymore. We need to think ahead. Prepare for what happens when our enemies learn to fight like us. I recommend we accelerate the fleet's modular redundancy upgrades and explore new ways to innovate our tactics. If we keep thinking like our enemies, we'll only ever be one step ahead. We need to think like humans. Always." She hit send and leaned back in her chair. Fleet Commander Vexter sat in her dimly lit chamber, her claws resting lightly on a control panel. The voracious mandible was gone, her fleet diminished, but her resolve had hardened. The human captain's final words from the first encounter replayed in her mind. "We don't fail because we plan not to." "What arrogance," she muttered, her mandibles clicking softly. "And yet, what resilience." She turned to Elner, who stood at attention nearby. "Begin drafting a proposal for fleet-wide adaptations," Vexter ordered. "We will study their designs, find their inefficiencies, their flaws. If we must, we will adopt their methods. But we will do it better." "But Commander," Elner said hesitantly, "what if their strength lies not in their technology, but in their unpredictability? Their willingness to accept inefficiency as a form of security?" Vexter's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "Then we will learn unpredictability, Elner. Prepare the simulations." As Elner left, Vexter stared out at the nebula, the faint light of distant stars reflecting off her multifaceted eyes. Humanity had proven to be a formidable foe, but the hexapods were nothing if not adaptable. On Earth, Captain Xing's report caused ripples throughout the United Sol Defense Council. The once disparate nations of Earth, united by their shared survival philosophy, debated the next steps. "We can't rely on redundancy alone anymore," Admiral Park said during a high-level meeting. "The hexapods will adapt. We need a new edge, something they won't see coming." Dr. Elena Vargas, a leading astrophysicist, leaned forward. "There's an experimental project I've been working on. It's called dynamic system integration. Instead of just relying on layers of redundancy, we create systems that can reconfigure themselves in real time based on the threat. Imagine a ship where every part is modular, able to transform depending on the situation." The council members exchanged looks. "It's risky," Vargas admitted, "but if we combine it with our redundancy doctrine, it could make our fleets nearly indestructible." Park nodded. "Do it. Humanity didn't survive this long by playing it safe." Months later, the Prometheus received an upgrade, a prototype dynamic system capable of transforming its structure and functionality mid-battle. Captain Xing watched in awe as her ship's hull reconfigured itself during a simulated attack, seamlessly repairing damaged sections while redirecting power to vital systems. "This," she said, "is the future." But as humanity prepared for its next encounter with the hexapods, one thing remained certain. Their greatest strength wasn't their technology or even their redundancy doctrine. It was their unyielding adaptability, their refusal to accept defeat, and their innate ability to turn every challenge into an opportunity. Somewhere in the vastness of space, Fleet Commander Vexler was preparing for her own battle of wits, determined to prove the collective's superiority. The stage was set for a clash not just of fleets, but of philosophies. A war where the ultimate victor would be the one who could adapt faster, think smarter, and perhaps embrace the chaos of the unknown. Humanity, as always, was ready.